Welcome to the show. I have a great show planned for you this week. Later on, I'll have with me my guest, Mitch Vingle, longtime WVU writer, now at Wheelhouse Creative. We'll be talking all about the WVU football team and the rest of the teams for this upcoming but different college football season. But first, we'll start with some of our usual features. And now that Labor Day has passed, school is back in session. In fact, not necessarily for the right reasons, but it feels kind of like the old days where school didn't start until after Labor Day when I was a kid. And that was the case this year. And a lot of differences for a lot of kids out there. Some only in person 2 days a week, some in person 5 days a week. Different places, even WVU suspended classes now completely or remote exclusively for at least the next couple of weeks. And I just want to mention something as school is starting back. That is school bus safety. When you see these school buses, put their signs out that say stop, make sure you do stop. And that applies regardless of which way you're traveling. Some people may think that you're only supposed to stop if you're behind the school bus or if you're on a 2-lane road. And that's not the case. If you're on a 4-lane road, 2 lanes going each direction, you're coming the opposite direction. When that school bus stops and puts its sign out, you need to remain stopped until that bus puts the sign back in and starts moving again. And you really need to do more than that. You need to keep a lookout in all directions for kids, because the kid may cross the street, because the bus has the sign out, and then all of a sudden that kid may run back across the other way because he thinks he forgot something or he wants to go over to a friend's house or whatever it may be. When there's kids around, there's a school bus around, there are kids around, you need to be extra careful. Unfortunately, as a lawyer, I've handled cases over the years where children have been hit getting off of school buses and some pretty bad injuries, as you might imagine, with a young kid getting hit by by a vehicle when getting off a school bus. So do your part, do your very best to make sure that you're being extra cautious when you see school buses around. Another thing I want to mention with school getting back in session is our teachers and school service personnel and all those other folks that help to make the school year happen. These are challenging times, and especially for them. It's never easy to have, 20 kids around that you're responsible for and having to make sure that they're not only taught, but also kept safe and healthy and all the things the teachers have to do. But to do it in these challenging times puts an even extra burden on the teachers, the administrators, the school service personnel. And I just want to tip my cap to them and wish them luck this school year, with all these challenges they're facing. None of them have ever had to deal with making sure kids have their masks on, making sure they're not sharing water bottles or touching each other a million times a day, and all the different things they're having to do to social distance. So, I know they're all doing the best they can. I know a lot of them are worried about their health and safety as well, in addition to those of the health and safety of the children. So let's do our part too to try to cooperate with them, try to coordinate with them, communicate with them to try to keep all of our kids healthy and safe. And to be quite honest, there has not been an abundance of children under 18 where we hear about testing positive or being hospitalized, things like that. Of course, the big concern is whether or not these kids may be asymptomatic and bringing it home to adults or grandparents, things like that. So, prayers for everyone out there that this school year will go as smoothly as possible given the circumstances. This time of year, as I mentioned last week, I always talk a little bit about politics as we're heading into the general election. We're less than 60 days away, and I'll be talking about different races each week, but this week I want to talk about the race in the West Virginia's 2nd Senatorial District. That has got incumbent Mike Maroney facing off against challenger Josh Gary. Now, some interesting things coming out this week. Josh Gary making some major announcements down in front of the Marshall County Courthouse talking about Senator Maroney's personal life, if you will, but also how it relates to his professional life. Of course, Mike Maroney, the incumbent senator, has been charged with soliciting prostitution. There are charges currently pending against him, and Josh Gary announced this week he was going to be contacting the Supreme Court to find out why the court file relating to that case is not accessible to the public. Typically, those files are available for the public to view, and he said he's going to look into that and contact the Supreme Court because he's been told by at least 3 people they've asked to see the court file and they've not been permitted to do so. Additionally, Maroney's trial has been continued on numerous occasions, and there's been no adjudication of that matter as to whether or not he's going to be found guilty of those charges. And I've seen the police report that was filed, and it is not painting a good picture, to say the least, in terms of some of the text communications, what the police found when they arrived at the woman's place of business or residence, whichever it may be, and what they observed there in terms of drug needles, in terms of used condoms, feces, and urine laying about. So not a good picture. But also, Josh Gary mentioned in his press conference this week that he has learned of an Ohio County case that details further issues regarding Mike Maroney and things that may call into question his ability to be a good representative for the people of the 2nd Senatorial District. And I just want to mention that because some people, I've seen comments on social media and other things, well, that's what he's doing in his private time. Well, no, it's not. It's not what he's doing in his private time. It's what he's doing as someone who is serving as a representative of the people of West Virginia. That 2nd Senatorial District includes some of this viewing area. It includes Marshall County, Wetzel County, Tyler County. It includes a number of other counties, Monongalia, Marion, Ritchie, Calhoun, Gilmer, Doddridge. It's a very big district, but Marshall, Wetzel, Tyler are right in the heart of that district. The question is, as a representative of that district, do people want someone who, on their time, is going out and soliciting prostitution, or at least has been alleged to be doing that? They want someone who is described as having some other habits that are very questionable. And we're talking about, someone who is the chair of the chair of the Senate Committee on Public Health and Human Services. I mean, and what does it say about someone, their views on public health, if that's what they're doing in their time? And then when you couple that with looking at Senator Maroney's attendance record while he's been in the Senate, you look at the number of times where there's been votes made on important issues and he's not even been present to vote, then that makes you start to wonder, why isn't he present to vote? Why isn't he attending? You look at some of the other issues that have been alleged in public court documents about what he is doing during his time not in the legislature. It makes you think, is this someone who wants serving? And can he be focused on doing the job for the people of the 2nd Senatorial District when he's got all these other issues going on in his life? So, I think I can anticipate as we go through the fall here, there's going to be some more of these issues that come out. Josh Gary alluded in his press conference this week to an Ohio County court case where there may be further details surrounding some of these issues. So I think there's going to be a lot more that comes out about this. And on the other hand, the people of the 2nd District have a choice of Josh Gary, who's a husband, father of 2 young girls. He's been a social studies teacher at John Marshall High School, a track and cross country coach at Sherrard, somebody who's represented the West Virginia AFT in both Marshall County and statewide. His dad was a coal miner. He's indicated he wants to fight for hardworking people, and I think this is a race that's really, going to look at one that will likely be flipped here in West Virginia as a result of all of these issues. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that and talk about others as we go forward. But I always like to give you a quote each week, and I thought this one was particularly appropriate. This comes from Chuck Norris, of all people. And Chuck Norris, famous martial arts guy, actor, said, "Good morals lead to good laws." And I thought that was particularly interesting. Good morals lead to good laws. And, I've made mistakes in my life. I've screwed some things up, and there are things I've done that I wish I wouldn't done. But the question is, are you making a mistake in the heat of the moment and do something you wish you wouldn't done, or are you repeatedly doing things that demonstrate poor morals? And that's a good question to ask in some of these political races. And I think Chuck Norris's quote, "The good morals lead to good laws," is something that's worth keeping in mind. We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll have with me my guest, Mitch Vingle. We'll be talking all about the college football season. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Our team at Wheeling Island Hotel Casino Racetrack has been working hard to play it safe. So when you play here, you're safe here. And as promised, we're bringing back many of the amenities you've asked for. Our table games are back in action and featured in a new location. Our hotel is now taking reservations, and we've expanded our food options. Our team is committed to play it safe by giving you a fun and safe Wheeling Island experience.
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when I have a guest with me, and this week's no different. I have with me Mitch Vingle, longtime writer on WVU Sports and now at Wheelhouse Creative here in Wheeling, advertising agency, doing all things advertising. But Mitch, good to have you here on the show.
Good to be here. I always enjoy coming and visiting this.
Yeah, it's a few times you've been here now,
Yep.
and last year we talked about college football, and I know when we were sitting here a year ago, or a little more than a year ago at this time, we didn't foresee this college football season and what it was going to look like. Of course, the coronavirus pandemic had not hit yet, and nobody had any idea that we'd be sitting here with a college football season starting with the Big Ten, the Pac-12 not even playing.
Oh, it's crazy. I covered sports for 38 years, never seen anything like this, and hope to never see it again. And I don't know. It's kind of taken a little wind out of the sails, I think, but still, I think people in the Big 12 and the ACC, SEC are still excited, and it'll be interesting to see how this goes down the road.
You know, you were a longtime member of the panel that voted among the Associated Press for the AP Top 25, had a Heisman Trophy vote for a long time. And I'm wondering, how does this affect those things? I mean, you've got now, you're going to have a top 25, but you've got all these schools from these conferences that aren't even playing, so they're out of the mix. So does it bring some other of the smaller schools into the mix? And
Oh, it's definitely going to do that. I think if you're, let's say, the Big 12, where you might have 3 teams, and now you're going to have 4 or 5, you're going to see an Appalachian State. You're going to see AAC. You're going to see more, UCF, Cincinnati. You're going to see more teams. It's too bad the MAC isn't playing, because I would think they would have a couple teams in there, but that's not going to be the case.
Well, and you even see, a school that has had moments through the years like BYU, but opened up with a big win, this past weekend, and you got to think that they're a team that's like eyeing up. Oh, what can we do here? And they've kind of struggled to put a schedule together, because of their independent status. But they're a team that they could get some impressive wins, and you say, what do you do with them?
Right. Well, even Memphis. Look at how they struggle with Arkansas State, but I expect them to be in the top 25, even though they did struggle. So you're going to see teams like that kind of hang in there when they might not before.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the college football playoff later in the show, but I'm eager to see if this year that one of the non-Power 5 schools jumps up and grabs a spot in the college football
Right.
playoff, because there's not as many teams in the field, so to speak.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, UCF is one that definitely could do that.
I think Cincinnati could. Cincinnati,
Yeah.
Since Luke Fickell's been there, has played some good defensive teams, play good offense. I mean, the schedule's manageable. So that's a team that I look at.
And I don't know if you remember, but Luke Fickell was up for the West Virginia job.
Oh yeah.
It was between him and because President Gee really liked Luke Fickell.
Yeah,
that
well,
was his guy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Luke was an Ohio State guy. President Gee was president of Ohio State for a period of time. So I kind of thought that was the direction it was going to go.
Right.
I was a little surprised when Neil Brown got the job and not Luke Fickell.
Yeah, I remember, because I kind of keep in touch with President Gee, and that was his guy, but he let Shane Lyons make the final call.
Well, speaking of WVU, let's talk about the team. I mean, I know you continue to follow the team, write about the team, and this is year 2 of the Neil Brown era. And, what can we expect here, do you think, out of the Mountaineers in year 2?
I think they'll improve because of the quality of the coach. I think he's done some great things with the kids. I think he's a very, very good coach. I have a lot of faith in him. A lot of people have talked about him and Don Nehlen being similar. I think he's also kind of a John Beeline, even though it's a different sport, but kind of a guy who really looks after the kids and takes care of them. I think he's like that, and I think he's very smart. So I think they'll improve, but I think they're still young. I think they've got some good talent at wide receiver. I actually like the quarterback, Deggy, pretty well. I like Letty Brown at running back. I just don't know about their offensive line again. One of their guys, James Gamiter, I think I say his name right, who's 1 year removed from moving over from defense, is kind of like the main anchor on that offensive line. And he said they'll be one of the most improved offensive lines in the country. So we'll see if that happens, because they need to be able to run the ball.
Well, that is a key. I mean, you look at last year, I'm excited to see a full season of Jared Deggy at quarterback. I mean, all year last season, I kept telling my 2 oldest boys, I said, wait till you see this Daigie kid, wait till you see, and they're like, who's Daigie? And I'm like, he can't play yet. He can only play 4 games or he loses a year of eligibility. I said, but I said, he's going to be pretty good, I think. And I think he did do very well, in that final stretch there. But now, a season, the downside or the disappointing note was, of course, spring practice was wiped out for everybody. So you didn't have those practices to develop, him and get used to him being in there. But I like what Sam James did at receiver last year, and then, as you mentioned, Letty Brown at running back. But that offensive line has got to do something to not only give Daigie time to throw, but as you said, you got to be balanced in college football to a degree. I mean, you can't have an inability to run the football. You got to be able to run the ball, and you got to be able to stop the run on defense. And I'm just not sure they can do it.
I think they've got 2 good backs. I mean, heck, 2 years ago, I remember everybody not only raving about Letty Brown, but Alex Sinkfield, who's behind him. I remember I used to do the Athlon preview for years for West Virginia, and they had a thing like Rising Star, and I asked all the coaches, off the record, and all of them were like Alex Sinkfield, and he hasn't done anything really of note, but that's how much they really believed in that kid. So now you've got a 1-2 punch, even though Sinkfield's more of a speed guy. So they've got some skilled position players. It's just a matter of whether they can block for them, like you said.
Turning to the other side of the ball in defense, one of the things that kind of excites me is the West Virginia presence on the defense. You look at the 2 stills on the defensive line. Dylan Tonkery at middle linebacker, and it's something we really haven't seen through the years historically. Is that that West Virginia presence, and we kind of have a little bit of that now.
Well, yeah, the pepperoni roll capital of the world is well represented on that defensive line. Tonkery, like you said, even a Dye, who's now a co-defensive coordinator. There's Alonzo Adai back there at safety. So even some, I don't know what you call it, legendary.
Sure. Legacy guys.
Legacy guys, yeah. So you've even got some of that. So yeah, it's neat to see. I think they're going to be improved on that side, but they're going to be young. They got the transfer from Arizona in Fields at linebacker. That'll really help. But they're young. I mean, between both sides, you've got 12 guys that are either redshirt or true freshmen on the 2 deep. So
yeah, I think
they're still a year away.
They are. The Mountaineers are a year away, and preserving that year of eligibility for Daigie by only playing him in a few games last year, I think was big, because you'll have this year and next year to still play. So, but I'm eager to see what happens. I think the Mountaineers will probably be a little bit better. I wouldn't be shocked if they don't get the 8 wins. I really think they could get there.
Yeah, and I keep seeing them down predicted at the bottom of the Big 12, and I don't see that. I think they'll be better than that.
Yeah. We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking college football. We'll look at some of the other conferences. We'll talk about the rest of the Big 12 and maybe give you a preview for the college football playoff. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Family owned and operated, Sunset Motors has the Valley's largest inventory and selection with over 250 new vehicles in stock and available. Now during Jeep Adventure Days, lease a Compass Latitude for $199 per month or get 0.9% for 84 months. Lease a Cherokee Latitude for $244 per month or get 0% for 72 months. Lease a Ram Bighorn for $239 per month or get 0% for 72 months.
You can love where you drive at Sunset.
Tractor trailers are some of the most dangerous vehicles on the road. There are federal rules for load sizes, driver's hours, and maintenance for a reason. When big rigs don't follow these rules, entire families can be torn apart. We have the talent and the resources to take on these large companies. Hopefully, through our work, families are being helped and trucking companies are getting the message about safety. Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest this week, Mitch Vingle. We've been talking all about the college football upcoming season. Of course, Mitch was a longtime college football AP voter and also Heisman Trophy voter as well. And Mitch, we talked a little bit about WVU, but let's talk about the Big 12 in general. Of course, the blue bloods of the conference are Oklahoma and Texas. And it seems like those are the ones to talk about again.
Right. Oklahoma has another quarterback,
of course,
that I'm sure will be in New York for the Heisman Trophy thing. Rattler, young kid who's one of the studs, out of this last recruiting class. So Lincoln Riley has that going again. Texas, we'll see. I mean, they're one of those who everybody's waiting for them to return to Texas.
Yeah, people talking about Tom Herman being on the hot seat this year, which kind of like is mind-boggling to me. These coaches get so little opportunity anymore. I mean, he's not like he's had bad seasons, but he's got Sam Ellinger back at quarterback, and so the expectations are high. And of course, you mentioned Spencer Rattler there at Oklahoma under the tutelage of Lincoln Riley. It's going to be those quarterbacks are going to be in the spotlight, and you look at these guys right in a row for. Oklahoma at quarterback, a couple, 3 Heisman finalists, 2 winners, and then of course Jalen Hurts last year, the transfer. So it'd be fun to see what Spencer Rattler can do there. But I just think Oklahoma's too innovative offensively. I mean, you look at what Lincoln Riley does in those big games, and those teams very well could end up playing each other twice. Once in the regular season, and then again, in the conference championship. And I think whoever ends up coming out of that, goes to the playoff this year.
Well, and it's just a matter, how far can Oklahoma go this time? I mean, when is their defense going to join the party?
They were improved last year. They were better.
They were improved. But, I mean, if you look at their recruiting rankings through the years, I mean, they should be better. They should.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, so.
Let's talk about the ACC, because a little twist this year now. My alma mater, Notre Dame, jumping into the conference for 1 year only. Because of the pandemic and all the scheduling changes and things that couldn't happen. But so Notre Dame, a member of the ACC for football, and of course, preseason pick number 2 behind Clemson, has been to 5 college football playoffs here in recent years, and they'll match up with each other in South Bend on November 7th. Everybody's kind of eyeing that game up. Trevor Lawrence back at quarterback. Dabo Swinney just has that program rolling. But Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, has a quarterback back as well, and Ian Book. And a lot of the other pieces of the puzzle around him this year, so that should be a lot of fun.
Well, they've got their defense set this year, correct?
For sure.
That's one of the things that I think is really going to help Notre Dame this year. I think it's really, really a neat twist to see them in a conference and to see how they could stack up with Clemson. Trevor Lawrence, as you mentioned, very good player. We know what Dabo Swinney's done, how he's built and continues to build. I can't get out of my mind when West Virginia played them and
put up 70,
hung up 70 points on them.
I was there that day. I know you probably were too.
Yeah, and you're thinking, okay, well, West Virginia's going to use this to build, and it was Clemson that built.
No doubt. Turning down to the SEC, LSU, of course, the defending national champs, but lost a ton. I mean, just lost. Of course, losing Joe Burrow, lost their offensive passing game coordinator in Joe Brady. Lost the defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach at Baylor, and Alabama, got to always be considered, I think, the team to beat in the SEC West, and of course, they are going to be hungry. I mean, anytime they don't win it, or anytime someone in the SEC kind of comes up to be the top dog other than them, they step it back up. It seems the next year, and they got Najee Harris back at running back. But you look on the other side of that conference, and Georgia has a transfer quarterback in JT Daniels, who came from USC to replace Jake Fromm, and Florida had a nice season last year, so that SEC is always fun to watch. But it feels like Alabama year.
Yeah, well, I think so, because of anybody who has a sense of Mononga's native, Nick Saban, the competitiveness of him. I think you've got to know that he's going to be really gearing his team up this year. Auburn's a team I like this year. I think that I don't know if you call them a surprise because they're still Auburn, but I really like them. Georgia, they're stacked. They're always stacked, but again this year.
Auburn always finds a way to lose a game they probably should win. But Texas A&M, another team worth keeping an eye on. Of course, the West Virginia native Jimbo Fisher there, and Kellen Mond back at quarterback, and I think they're a team that could surprise some people with what they do in the SEC.
Yeah, I agree. Isn't it something that the West Virginia lineage in college football history, especially at the highest levels? I think it's really something to be proud of, I think.
All right, give me 4 playoff teams.
Oh, gosh. I told you I'm going to pick a surprise, okay? My surprise is going to be Miami. I think Derek King is going to show people that he's a Heisman Trophy candidate this year. So I'm going to pick them. I'm going to go with Alabama, Clemson. I think it's tough. And then I'm going to go with your Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Well, Interestingly, Derek King transferred from Houston. Apparently he didn't like Coach Holgorsen too much there.
Well, what happened was Holgorsen tried to use the redshirt rule, play him for 4 games, and then sit him out, and he thought he would keep him and he would get, grow. But no.
Yeah.
The Sharks came, man.
my playoff team is pretty similar to, similar to yours, but I go with Alabama. I'm going to go with Oklahoma out of the Big 12. Clemson, so some usual stuff, and I'm going to go with Notre Dame as well. I just think, and I really think this could be a big year for Notre Dame if they avoid injuries. I think they've got all the pieces of the puzzle. It's a little bit of a homer pick, I know. I kind of be that way every year. I keep waiting for this to be the year, but that's kind of how I see it. So, Mitch, I really appreciate you being here on the show.
Fun.
Always fun to talk football with you.
Yep, anytime.
And, it'll be fun to watch and see what happens.
Right.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up with some professional sports, including the Steelers, who are going to be starting off the season. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
The Panhandle Difference.
It was a really easy process getting started with them, and then bam, it just took off. We've had a lot of gatherings here. We've had a whole basketball team. We've had lots of family dinners, birthday parties. I mean, I can't wait for holidays to come. It's a great kitchen. Honestly, it couldn't have turned out any better.
Welcome back to the show. I want to talk a little bit of Pittsburgh Steelers with the time we have left. And, of course, the Steelers do kick off on Monday Night Football. Something to note, like a 7 o'clock-ish kickoff, a little after 7, because there's 2 games that night. So don't wait until 8:15 and miss the whole first quarter. But going to be exciting to see the return of Big Ben. I like this team. Watch out for Chase Claypool, the big, tall receiver who's also very fast. I think he'll complement that receiving core well. But what's got me excited is Ben coming back and still having all 3 levels of that defense being what they are, with Tuitt and Hayward up front, with you get Dupree and Bush at linebacker, you got Minka Fitzpatrick and Joe Hayden in the secondary. It's just a really, really good defense again, and now you've got Ben back on the offense. If he can stay healthy, it's a big if he can stay healthy, this is a Super Bowl winning type team. I'm going to take Steelers over Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl this year, seeing an old friend in Tom Brady. I think the Steelers get it done over Tampa. It'll be the first time ever a team plays in its home city for the Super Bowl with Tampa. That's all the time we have this week. We'll talk more about the Steelers next week. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next time on the Jamie Bordas Show.